All right, what's going on, guys? Thanks for checking us out here at Brothers of Merit. It's Brandon coming at you, and I got Taylor with me, my other host. What's up, Taylor?
What up?
Season 2.
Season 2, baby.
Thank you guys for coming back. We definitely, as we always have started, we're going to thank you. And we have seen you guys stick around. We've heard a lot of things from you about Season 2 and how eager you are to have us come back. We have some content lined up, some interviews, some people that, after this episode actually we're recording, we're actually interviewing Taylor and his brothers, the three of them. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I know, Taylor, you probably are as well.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
But we have a lot of stuff lined up for Season 2, and the path that Brothers of Merit is taking, the growth we're seeing. This has been such a cool journey. And when we say growth, we don't mean just the numbers. The people we have talked to, the people that we've actually seen in person that have approached us and said, hey, your podcast and your content has helped me. Or, hey, how are you guys doing? How's it going? And things like that. I mean, it's been great. And that's why we're so, stoked to just start Season 2. It's been, 12, 13 weeks. We're chomping at the bit to get it out. So
that's a great word. I'm glad you just said that, specifically not numbers. The growth that we've seen in each other, the growth that we've seen what Brothers of Merit is. You know what I mean? It's more than just, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. For us, I think it really started as this really cool thing where we used to always say, I don't know, it's really cool. And we're seeing what God has to do. And we're talking to people that we have no business talking to. And God's doing some really cool things with it. And now it's this really cool thing that we both have had conversations with people where they approach us about it. And people reach out to us because God's really doing, I don't know, just the growth beyond just this is a pet project to really being no, this is really a ministry that we really feel called to do. And God's really doing incredible things that I know I've grown from what's happened here. And I know that I've heard that other people who are listening right now have grown as well. So,
absolutely.
I'm just fired up to see what Season 2 has in store.
Heck yeah.
Same it's going to hold, man.
So what's going on in life, man? I know, obviously, what's going on for you. I'm sitting in your new office right now. But let's fill the guys in what's been going on these past 12, 13 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's what we wanted to do with this episode is really just talk about, what's been going on in our lives, why we took a break, what is coming out of that creatively.
Yep.
And how God worked in our lives the past, like you said, 13 weeks. Because I know it's been huge in both of us. So for me, I bought a house. And if you would have asked me, literally, if you probably would have, if we were to think through, if you would have asked me when I was going to sell my house, when Season 1 was still being recorded, I probably would have said a year and a half, maybe 2 years from now. And here we are sitting in my new house. Yeah, it was a wild journey. I'll spare you the details. I wrote a blog about it, so I'll spare you all those super gory details.
Check the blog out, by the way.
Check our blog out, and you can get all the intimate details of it. But really, the meat of the matter, because I think it's important to talk about, is basically Amber felt so my wife felt like she heard God saying no, trust me, sell your house, and then I'll tell you where to go. And so I was all right, game on.
That's what you guys did.
That's it. Without any idea of where we were going to be, we decided to sell our house. And I haven't read it, but my mother-in-law is reading a book by John Ortberg that's called If You Want to Walk on Water, You Have to Get Out of the Boat. That's just to, I don't know, peel the curtains back from me a little bit. Faith has always is one of my spiritual gifts. I've taken, I've always learned that faith is one of my spiritual gifts. Just doing big things and expecting God to show up and do big things is just kind of how God's gifted me. But once I had kids, I have a family, that's a lot harder to do. That's
right.
A lot scarier to do. Taking a huge step and just selling my house without an idea of where how I'm gonna provide a roof over their heads is scary.
And what roof that'll be.
Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have to take care of them, and it's, I don't know. So, I was a little more apprehensive, like, to just be honest. Like, I wasn't necessarily the leader, like, pushing us off. Amber was like, no, like, I promise you, like, I'm telling you, this is what God is telling me to do. We need to do it. So I was like, all right. So we decided to do it. So I really followed her, which, like, if we want
is a whole other avenue we could take in itself.
right.
Not just following God's word, but following your wife's. I just finished a Bible study on marriage, just because I wanted to, and the things I learned from it, but that's a whole different podcast. We would be sitting here for hours talking about our wives and, marriages, but keep going. Sorry.
No, because you're right. We could get into it, and we might. I think it's an important topic, like, because I think we've talked about it before. There's a bunch of other blogs and podcasts and things that exist right now that are very, like, biblical manhood exists in, I think, a very, like, just traditional sense of manhood, and I don't think it's necessarily right. Like, in order to be the man of the house, you need to pick up your sword and slay the dragon, and I don't necessarily think that's really how God called us to lead.
I think it has its applicability in certain, absolutely, but yeah, not 100% of the time. I don't think it needs to be that way.
No, I agree 100%. And so, I've decided to. We decided to sell our house. We decided to follow God and do that. And it was tough. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, there was some ups, there were some downs, there was some like, what did we just do? Like, I don't know, like, the moment when it happened, like, at first, the first couple of days, I was like, no, this is awesome. This is what God's telling us to do. We need to do it. This is great. And then, like, I checked on Zillow every, like, 35 minutes to see if there was a new house.
You mean 35 seconds.
Right, exactly. Like, is there a new listing? Like, the only way I'm going to buy a house is if, like, I just get there first, I guess.
Can I interrupt and say the fun fact about this entire story as well is Taylor was actually on the other side of the nation when a lot of this was going on. This dude was in Portland, with UA on a trip or whatever, doing business, and this is all happening on the home front with Amber. So I just thought it was insane. Like, legitimately came back from Portland and was like, "Hey man, I sold my house." I was like, "You did what?" He's like, "Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about it, but I didn't even know too many details because I was on the other side of the nation. I was 3 hours apart." I was like, "What in the world just happened?" Like, it's insane. So I had to throw that little detail.
That's fair.
That makes it pretty wild.
Yeah, it's fair, because it was on a Saturday. We looked at a house, decided to list our house. Sunday morning, I got on a plane, and I was on a plane. I landed in Portland Sunday afternoon, and Monday night or Tuesday morning in the office, I was electronically signing papers to sell my house.
Yeah, your house went quick.
It went really quick,
which is a beautiful townhome, and
yeah,
we were in the same community.
Right.
Ouch. Dang.
The sting. Yeah, shout out my sister-in-law, who was our realtor, Lindsay Nichols. Go check her out if you're local.
What?
And then it was the first. So, like I said, I was checking Zillow, like, religiously. And for the record, we're gonna get to what's going on in Brandon's life. So, like,
no rush.
Just, if this is boring, just smash the 30-second button.
There's lessons to be learned in everything.
No, and so I was checking Zillow. Literally, I mean, it was like consuming me. So, the first weekend after that, I did a fast from looking at houses. So, like, right when I need to buy a house, I decided to fast from looking at houses. And so I stopped. I, like, closed the Zillow tab on my phone, didn't pull it up on my computer, and every time I wanted to look for a house, I stopped and I prayed, and I thought, and I prayed, God, and so this is really one of the coolest things that I didn't blog about, but I prayed, like, at first I was praying, like, God, like, just, I want you to be in control of this situation. I want to just give it over to you and everything like that. And then I realized, like, I don't need to be praying for God to provide a house for me. like he's already done that. Like
Right.
he already knows, he has a plan. He's already, time doesn't exist. Like he's already, like he knew we were going to be right here, right now, right today on October 11th, you know, before we
Yeah, exactly.
before the beginning of time. He knew that this house was going to, I don't need to pray for him to do that. What
point.
I need to pray for, it's almost essentially, like, for lack of a better word, like that's a waste of time.
Right.
Like I needed to pray, like, God, like, let my heart be postured.
Yeah. Give you the strength
To give you control, God.
Yep.
Like, let me be filled with peace and let me give over control. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I realized. I don't know if you want to.
No, it literally it's funny you said that, because the first thing that, this is so cliche, but when everyone always says like Jesus take the wheel, I mean that prayer that you're talking about is exactly that. And what you said about like getting into me, I want to hit on that as well. The reason we do this podcast is not just because you guys clearly know we don't talk about ourselves like that often, but there's always lessons to be learned. I could sit here and listen to you talk about something in your life, and it is applicable to a whole other facet of my life, but I can take something away from it and use it on that. 100%. So all the people listening are the same way. I guarantee they can take something away from this. And right now, you guys need to realize, and we all need to realize that, you know, we need to be able to take our hands off the wheel and trust in God's word. You know what I mean? Like, trust. He has put so much word in that Bible and the things that he has said, and we just got to trust it. We have to, you know, really say, hey, you're in control. And I love the fact that you pointed out that it was a total opposite. Hey, don't find me a house. My house is existing. The next house I'm going to live in is existing.
Yep.
Well, I know when I move into it.
Exactly.
But God, I need to be able to sit down and say, hey, I'm trusting you right now to lead me there. Right. So,
like it says in 1 Thessalonians, I'm getting better. I get at least.
Yes.
I think it's 1 Thessalonians. Like it says, it says pray without ceasing. Like, and then it also says, here it is, somewhere in the New Testament.
His Bible degree. Like, where is it? I'm going to tear it up. It says
somewhere in the New Testament, like, don't worry about anything, but instead pray about everything. And I think that's also a paraphrase. But and so also, I think this is a good time to also caveat, like, I'm by no means anyone that deserves like a medal because of what happened. Like this, I'm telling you this story to brag on how God worked in my life. Like this
why we do this podcast,
right? Like this is, if you're tuning into this podcast because you think like Brandon and Taylor are like the people that you should be getting lessons from, like that's awesome. Keep listening, please, because we'll talk to people that you should be listening to.
Yep.
And I'm not discounting us at all. What I'm saying is what you're going to hear from us, hopefully, and hold us accountable. Like, literally call us out. Like honestly, this will be, it would be very sad, but this would, I haven't ran this by you at all, and I literally come up with this moment right now. This is a peel back behind. This is how everything Brothers Merit ever happens.
I want you guys to
I'm always like, oh, I just thought of something literally.
Hearing it firsthand.
Like literally, like if we ever stop doing what I'm about to say, leave us a 1-star review, like calling us out on it. Like,
right. I agree. No, you're right.
Like, this is not us saying I'm on a pedestal, follow me and do what I'm doing. This is always going to be us just pointing the mirror back and saying, like, look at how God's working in our lives.
Yep.
And
100%.
this is what God has given us a message to share. Like so that's what, like, it's not diminishing. Like, you should listen to us, hopefully, because God's given us a word to say, but like,
absolutely,
not because we are the prophet from the mountain who has a message that you need to hear.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're nobody that you need to be like trying to model your life after, because we're trying to model our lives like Jesus, just like everyone else should
after
be.
him.
So if that's the case, then yeah, sure. But
we're all in it together. Yeah, man. Yeah.
But, so that was one of the cool things was through that fast, I realized like I just need to put myself in a position where I'm just trusting that God's in control. He's got this thing. And yeah, long story short, we bought a house. One ended up showing
Beautiful
up on the
house.
market. We settled 2 days before we sold this, but we sold the house 2 days before we bought the new house. Like God's timing was literally perfect. And this is what I wrote in the blog, and I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna say it. Like, like this story does not only like it's not just awesome because I'm now sitting in my house.
Right. It was awesome before
Right.
you found the house.
If I was homeless in my in-laws' basement right now, like God would still be good and this story would still be worth telling.
100%.
Like the blessing does not define whether or not God is good, right? Like this is not a cause and effect relationship. This is not John's blog from by the time this airs, John's blog from a couple weeks ago mentions that he says the exact same thing when I forget what the blog was called. The picture's flames, and it's about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it's an incredible blog. If you haven't been reading his blog weekly, you need to do it. You can check it out at brothersmerit.com or through our Instagram at brothers_of_merit. That'll link you right through to the blog. And like I said, John's been absolutely hitting that out of the park. So we're excited to have him on. Due to the fact that it's very late, that might not be happening in person on an interview, but it'll be happening very soon with my brothers. But yeah, so Brandon, so that's me. That's what's been happening in the past 12 weeks. On top of trying to find, we really do have some pretty awesome guests lined up for season 2. We're super pumped about, and we're just really excited about kind of what we have planned for just some structure, the way things are going to go. Yeah, we're really excited about season 2. I think that's really all I have to say about it. But Brandon, what about you?
Oh man,
It's been 12, 13 weeks, man. What's been going on?
It has been. So I have since been elected the president of the United States. In case you guys didn't hear that,
you literally, when you started, I've been elected. I was like, what? What?
It's news. We're peeling back the curtain. Right? No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I'm not.
And then this is gonna be bad, but not to. Sorry to.
No, you're fine.
I thought you were about to say. I don't know why, but I thought you were about to say I was elected as the HOA president of our neighborhood. And like that was like an announcement because you told me like a year ago that like since you are firefighters, you're at home a lot, you like actually voted in the HOA stuff. So I thought that like mattered to you enough to be.
I did. I would never be the president, but I did vote because I just followed.
Hey, it's just being a good citizen.
Yeah, I'm just So yeah, what's been going on in my life? So
You're not the HOA president.
I am not,
or the president, of the
United States. Contrarily to many people's beliefs, I'm not. Sorry, darn it. But no, there's not too much going on that's too crazy. There's been a lot of cool things that have come about since Brothers of Merit has started, and that's been over the past almost year. But over the past 13 weeks in particular, in regards to the military and the Air Force, I was selected for the position of Religious Affairs Airman. So that is extremely, that was one of the things I've been aiming for the past basically 4 years since of growing my faith. That's what I wanted to do, not just serve the United States military, but serve very closely the soldiers and airmen and sailors and everybody. Even just because I'm in the Air Force doesn't mean I won't at some point, serve others. So that's huge for me. I definitely feel that's my calling. I'm not sure what. I've been thinking a lot lately. About a year ago, I thought about maybe trying to take the chaplaincy route and become an actual chaplain, and I tabled that because I didn't want it to be an impulsive decision on certain things in my life at that time, mainly this podcast. So I sat back and I was like, I'm going to give it some time. My wife and I talked. We were like, let's just let it ride. If it's God's will, if it's in his master plan for my life, then it'll come about. And here I am a year later, and about 3 weeks ago now, I brought it up to my wife, like, hon, I cannot shake this feeling that I want to become a chaplain. And as many of you probably sit in your cars right now listening to this, or at home or running or whatever, listening to this podcast, as many of you do, you're probably thinking the same thing I am, where I could never be a chaplain. I lack the biblical knowledge, or I lack the biblical education, and that's where I stand. But I've had a lot of good people in my life, Taylor as well, we talked last week about it, and others, that if you do fear something in that realm, you will gain that biblical knowledge. That's, you will gain that through school. Like, don't worry about that. The true part is you need to figure out if that is your calling from God. So if it is, pursue it. And that's where I sit a year later now, is I don't want to sit back anymore and think, maybe it could be. Like, I want to do it. I think God's calling me to do it. It's been a year, so I know it's not an impulsive, like, decision I'm making right then. So I think I might pursue that. But for now, the enlisted side of it, I've been accepted as an RAA. So that's going to be really neat to serve not just God, but serve the military and the airmen within the United States Air Force in that capacity. So I'm super eager for that. And
yeah, and actually, sorry, not to, since like you said, we talked about this. I think my favorite part about that is exactly like you just said. Like there's just a ton of wisdom in how you like waited to not do that like knee jerky because you were just like, I don't know, like on a mountaintop or whatever, and like you just needed to like whatever, like it was like, no, I'm gonna, and it wasn't just like, I don't know, like it wasn't just like a back burner tabling thing. Like you spent like a year like really kind of like you say like you can't shake it because like you took a lot of time like prayerfully and thoughtfully like really thinking through that and asking people, you know what I mean? And like you would, I mean literally like to go back to, I don't know what episode it is off the top of my head, but like I remember specifically after Charles Causey's interview,
he was
a chaplain in the Army. Look at you.
Maybe. Don't fact check me though.
From season 1, like as soon as we usually when we finish an interview, we, you know, end and we're like, okay, thanks, you know, whatever. Can we ask you a couple more questions? Just some housekeeping stuff. And with that one, Brandon was like, actually, while you're here, can I ask you about being a chaplain? Like, and he like, and it, like, I don't know, just like that right there, like I think is a picture of like the humility you put into it and just the wisdom. So not that you need to be commended to use a Brandon line, but I think
nice.
to highlight the fact that to anybody listening, like I think there's a lot of wisdom in doing that. I think there's a lot, like there's a reason to tell that story because there's, like you said earlier, like there's a reason to listen to this and gain something from both of what happened to us because you know what I mean. So I love it. And then B, throwing it back to season 1, episode 2, it was Brandon Collier by himself. Brothers of Merit,
all lonesome.
Brothers of Merit was Brandon Collier by himself. I wasn't even a part of this at this point. And season 2, episode 2 was called Overcoming Fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally disregarding doubters. Yeah.
Overcoming fear, disregarding the doubters.
Which was recorded in January 2019.
It was.
It's now October 2019. So like I don't like, I think it's super, super cool that like that was the topic we led off with and like this whole Brothers Merit thing.
Yep.
But like, and now to like see it, you know what I mean? Like to see how that came to fruition. So if you want to hear more of what we're talking about, go back, listen to episode 2. He's gonna hate that I just said that.
Oh man,
just because of the production value.
Gosh, don't do it. Don't go back.
Go back and listen to that and hear where Brandon. I'm like, it's, and that like, so this is another like random thing. It's funny. We said, what are we gonna talk about for 35 minutes without like a script? And
here it is.
I've been meeting with like a couple different groups over the past couple of weeks and months. And 2 different like mentors in my life in the span of like 3 days asked me, like, do you journal? And so like with that, I was like the first time I was like, no, like, you know, I've done it in the past, you know. And then the next day another guy asked me and I was like, okay, God, like I get it. I'll journal.
I will start to journal.
Like I understand. Well, actually it was, and then I was talking to another buddy. Not kidding, like a couple days later, and I mentioned that, and he was like, "Dude, journaling's like the best thing I've ever done." Like, and it's you know whatever. So I was like, "Okay, like I get it, like brick over the head, I get it." But the reason why I brought that up is, like, this is like a journal, you know. Like, go back and listen to episode 2. Hear where Brandon's mind was in February. Hear like how God worked through. Like literally, like read the journal of how God worked over the past 10 months in Brandon's life.
Wow, yeah.
Of like overcoming the fear and like disregarding the doubt and whatever. And like now, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
Like
And
that's awesome.
that journal, we're gonna end with the journal because I do want to talk about that. That's actually pretty cool. That came to fruition during these past 13 weeks. So we'll end with that. But you know, to end my part, the really cool. No. The really cool part that I think has come from all of this is who it has made me. And what I mean by that is, if you guys listen to that episode, you'll hear one of my biggest fears was, obviously, if you guys don't know, if you're new to this season or this podcast, go back to season 1 and listen. But if you want to start here, I'm a firefighter. That's what I do for a career. I'm in the military and the reserves. And my biggest fear was what others would think about me starting this podcast and really coming out with my faith. So you know what I mean? Like I was extremely worried about others, and that's why I started off with that episode right out of the jump. Episode 1 was just telling people who I am and what I wanted to do, and then 2 was the overcoming the fear, because that was it. I did not want people to think less of me as a firefighter or a soldier or anything, because I was a faithful man, because I followed God. He was my savior, and I got over that. I've gotten to the point now where, I want to be that, street corner evangelist. I want to be that person that is, I'm not worried about my faith anymore or what people think of me. So what that has done in my life in the fire service is it's brought out more men that have come to me and talked about faith because they are now listening to this podcast. Firefighters that are some of the most aggressive men I've ever been in a burning building with are now confronting me and talking to me about faith. Grown men.
The exact opposite of what you've...
Exactly.
The exact opposite.
Exactly. And that's the stuff that we said at the beginning of this podcast, of this episode, which is what is pumping us up and that's making us start this season 2 and keep us driving on. It's not numbers. It's the fact that those men older than me at different places in their lives are coming to me asking me for advice, and vice versa. I'm hitting advice off them, and that's how this works. That's how God made us to work. But I just think it's amazing the progress that has come from there, and that's where I stand now in my life is I'm talking with men at work in an atmosphere and an environment I never thought I would, on a topic that I never imagined in a million years would be brought up at a firehouse table, but we're talking about it. And we're starting to dig deeper to the fact where we're holding each other accountable to Bible verses and reading our Bibles. And, the one Bible verse that comes into my head is in Matthew, I believe. And it says, "For where your treasure is, your heart will be also." And I know people can kind of relate that to finances, but I like to relate that to where my heart is in my faith. So like my treasure is God. And obviously the Bible, you can put in any context that, you feel necessary. But for this one in particular, where your treasure is, where, that my treasure is my Bible, my God's word. Obviously if you're a Christian, we have our Savior is, God. And that's where my treasure is. So my heart is there with him. So by what we mean is, and that's why this has all come and it'll make a full circle is because my treasure, my Bible, my word, the men that around me are the same way now. So nobody's afraid to bring up their questions. Yeah. Nobody's afraid to bring up their thoughts or their doubts on faith or anything. They bring it up, and it actually makes me feel more of a man than I was a year ago. So, and don't take that in like, oh, I'm masculine, chop down a tree type stuff. Like, it just makes me feel more of a leader, of a man, of a husband, and a friend to be able to say the things that I just did. So my recommendation, obviously we have takeaways from everything. So for Taylor's an aspect of buying this house, and, trust God, trust his will, take your hands off the wheel and trust him enough to steer your life and the fact that he will. You know what I mean? And for my aspect, my takeaway for you guys is this 30 minutes later, we're like telling you the Reader's Digest notes that we should have, But for my takeaways, I want you guys to realize is to not be afraid. Don't be afraid to be you. And who you believe is what who you believe you are is who God made you to be. So be passionate about your faith, be outgoing, and just be yourself. That's my takeaway. And by doing 100%. So, I am now light years, ahead of where I was a year ago. And I wasn't a bad man a year ago, obviously, I don't think that at all. It's just my faith has grown so strong since then. So to wrap this all up, I wanted to hit on the journal aspect because you have started that, Taylor. And obviously you've dabbled with it before, but you've gotten really more serious about it and structured over these past 12 weeks. So let's talk into, because I'll give us 3 things to talk about. So we just talked about the one from Taylor. Mine is 2. So let's wrap up. Why do you think the journaling aspect is important, and how has it changed your life, the past few weeks that you've started it, what can you give to the listeners and maybe why it might benefit them?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's a great word. I'm trying to think through the answer. Sorry.
I put you on the spot, I know, but
you did. No, it's good. I love it. I think that 100% I love it.
My wife is going to hear
Call
that.
out, Brittany.
She says we say 100% way too much. So, and I have said it in this podcast already. So,
did you see what I did there? Just bought some time.
You did
to figure out an answer. No, I think that because at first I'm like, this is just writing down my prayers. Right? Like, why am I doing this? Like, why don't I just sit here and, like, what's the difference between just sitting here and, like, praying and, like, spending intentional time with God and, like, literally writing down my thoughts? Like, what is the difference? Like, this is just being 100% honest. But then, like, the more I realize it, the more I do it, I guess the more I realize, I think it's, I don't know, like, it's almost like, the benefit is looking back, right? Like, I was told, I got some advice from, I would call him my mentor at the time, but the president of the college that I went to, Lancaster Bible College, he told me one time that you can see God's will for your life by looking back over the will for, like, looking back over your life, right? Like, what we need to do looking forward and in the day to day is just wake up and live every day trying to live like Jesus, right? Like, we've talked about that before. So, like, wake up, you journal, you try to live like Jesus, and this, just throw the journaling aspect into it. You journal, you try to live like Jesus, you do your best, you try, you fail, you succeed, you know, whatever.
Right.
You're just trying to, like, in the moment, right now, it says in James, life is fleeting, it's but a vapor. Like, we're not even guaranteed tomorrow. If we plan tomorrow, like, James goes as far as to say, like, that's ignorant. Like, to assume that we're even going to be here tomorrow, to, like, plan cities. Like, God could have us be wiped out tomorrow. The propane pilot light on my fireplace could blow up tomorrow.
I'm not going to light it like you asked me to.
Like,
earlier.
that would, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow, right? All I need to do is just plan on today. And then tomorrow, I wake up and I plan on, and I figure out today. I try to look like Jesus today. And then looking back over my life, that's when you see, like, oh, that's how God had a plan. Like, that's what God was doing in that time, right? Like, I really like that. You don't try to figure out the big picture when you're in the minutia, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, when you're in the day-to-day, don't try to figure out, like, what is God doing with this whole big thing? Like, why am I working where I'm working? And why am I, dating who I'm dating? Or how am I, you know what I mean? Like, what is God's plan? How could he possibly be working? Like, you don't try to figure that out. So to tie it on to the journal thing, writing down, like, your thoughts and your prayers, and, like, exactly like David in Psalms, like, sometimes being frustrated, like, just exactly where you are in that day. And then going back and reading back over it, then you're like, man, look at how God was working in my life, right? Like, one of my favorite stories when it comes to journaling is Amber was a big journaler back when she was, like, kind of, like, in her, like, big, like, pit, like, life was hard time, right? And so she was journaling, and she literally had written in her journal, like, God, like, I really feel like we're in a really good spot now, me and you. Like, my relationship with you is really good. Like, you've spoken to me a lot. I really feel like I'm, whatever. So, like, thanks. And, like, let's just keep it the way that we are, please. And, like, 1 week later is when I walked in to her life, and, like, we started, and, like, I showed up.
No way.
Was like, should we start dating or whatever? And she literally, like, she has journal entries. She was just like, why are you doing this? Like, I just said I wanted it to just be me and you. Like, we're good. Like, don't change anything.
Right.
And that's when Taylor showed up.
Here comes Taylor.
But, no, I don't know. So I guess that's.
No, I think that's perfect. That's
part of it.
No, I think they hit the nail right on the head. Like, that's what people need to understand about journaling. And I have not done it before, But since you bringing it up and talking to me about it and the guys here on this podcast, like I'm extremely interested in it. It's something that I'm probably going to attempt. And I thank you for sharing that input. And the guys, I'm sure, got takeaway. And I ask all of you guys that if it sounds like something that's intriguing to you, go for it and try it out. You know what I mean? So
I just had a thought, like if we were really like good at this as like a company, then it would have been like, and we're coming out with Brothers of Merit journals, and you
find them here, and then here's the pen.
Find a leather-bound journal,
and boom.
Unfortunately, we're not.
We're just Taylor and Brandon. But I believe it says in Philippians that I can do all through Him who gives me strength. So I think that's a good, verse to tie up everything that we have just talked about. Is strength. The strength to, reach out to God. The strength to say, hey, it's yours. I'm not holding that wheel. It's the strength to say, hey, I don't care what people think about me or my faith. I'm true to you. I'm true in my faith. So life's going to take me, and look what happens. People come that you think never would in a million years. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then also stay strong, write things down, and just go back and see where you were and say, you know what? Maybe life wasn't all that bad at that moment in my life. Amber thought that one of the hardest times in her life that she still had one of the best relationships with God, even though she was going through a hard time. But that's when she felt strongest with Him. And that's not supposed to be. You're supposed to seek Him. That's why I just love this. And we could talk for hours, but we're not going to.
I was about to segue again, but we're done.
No, we can't segue anymore. But
no, I love that.
Fellas, ladies, if you're listening because you want to know what your husbands are listening to, thank you. Thanks for coming out and listening to Season 2, Episode 1. We are so stoked to start this season off. 100%. Taylor, I don't want to speak for you, but I know you feel the same exact way. It's been a great episode, I think. Sorry we jabbered on about some stuff, but I really do think if you listen to what we had to say, read between the lines, and take out all the fluff that we talked about, you'll really get some good takeaways for this week. So on that note, be safe, whatever you're doing. If you're driving, don't text and drive. Just let this thing play. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.
See ya.